social alienation, which creates social isolation, where children with learning disability will be pushed to stay alone. Social alienation. Social alienation is situation
Purnima,
where an individual. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, am I not audible? Sir, sir, am I not audible? Hello. Sir, am I audible now? Sir,
it's not audible. Purnima, you're not.
sir, is it not audible?
So we will start the next presentation. So now I call upon Ms. Amani Qasim Al-Kashani, a PhD research scholar at RK FDMSc, to present her paper on status of educational services and diagnostic methods for students with learning disabilities in IBB Governorate, Yemen. Over to Amani.
Hello, good evening to all. Is it visible? Hello, is it visible?
Yeah, it's visible and audible. Go ahead.
Okay, okay. My study is status of educational services and assessment methods for students with learning disability in Eb Governorate, Yemen, presented by Amani Al-Gashani. A learning disability is a neurological condition which affects the brain's ability to send, receive, and process information. A child with learning disability may have difficulties in reading, writing, speaking, listening, understanding mathematical concepts, and with general comprehension. Learning disabilities include a group of disorders such as dyslexia, dysgraphia, and dyscalculia. Each type of disorder may coexist with another. Rationale of the study, individuals with learning disabilities are considered to have an illegitimate disability, have a reduced intellectual capacity, and does not deserve care in the presence of visible and primary care impairments like hearing impairment, visual impairment, intellectual disability, or physical impairments. Cognitive deficiency in the concept of learning disability among school teachers makes the study of the subject of learning disability a priority in scientific research to avoid the deterioration that occurs in the achievement level of students. Having an invisible disability facilitate passing and non-disabled, thereby reducing the discrimination between groups, especially since each classroom has from 16 to 18 students. Excluding learning disability from solution and taking care can accelerate negative expectations. So the statement of the problem will be according to the previous reason. So the researcher found that it's necessary to study the status of the educational services and assessment method for students with learning disability in Governorate, Yemen. Objective of the study to to find out the educational services provided to SWLDs in government school in Governorate, Yemen. To identify the assessment methods used to assess SWLDs in government schools in Governorate, Yemen, to verify the availability and use of resource room in the government schools with SWLDs in Governorate, Yemen. Research question: is there any educational services provided to SWLDs in the schools of Governorate, Yemen? Is there any assessment methods used with SWLDs in the school of Governorate Yemen? Is there any research room used for SWLDs in the schools of Governorate Yemen? Is there any differences between districts of Governorate in providing educational services and using assessment methods for SWLDs in the schools of Governorate Yemen? Research design, survey research design was adopted, and the sample was sample 16 government schools in 3 districts, Al-Dahar, Al-Mashanna, and Jibla district. These are the district. Al-Dahar district, under the Al-Dahar there is a 7 schools, and under Mashanna 5 schools, and under Jibla district 4 schools. Instrumentation. Open-ended questionnaire consists of 103 items in 6 domains. These are the 6 domains of the study of the scale, and the number of items for each domain and maximum and minimum scores. Other tools were used during data collection, like interview, observation, students' reports. These are some photos which have been collected during the interview with principals and teachers. And also these are some photos of the school with the sample. And these are also the students' records. It was the one way of the data collection. Here, data analysis. Inferential and descriptive statistical was used. Mean and cross-call was used. Here in research question number 1, there is a significant differences between districts, and there is a significant differences between mean and assumed mean. That means there is no educational services provided to SWLDs. For research question number 2, assessment method used with the SWLDs. Here, there is a significant differences between districts, and also there is a significant differences between mean and assumed mean. The third question, is there a research room used for SWLDs in the schools of Ab University? Here, there is no significant differences between districts, as we say here. Here, there is all the districts are same, but between mean and assumed mean, there is a gap and huge differences between mean and assumed mean, which means there is no significant difference. Which means there is no research room for all the districts of Ab Governorate.
Here, research.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Go to your conclusions. Time.
What?
No, just pass on to your conclusion. It's time.
Major finding. There are no educational services provided to SWLDs in the Ab Governorate Yemen. There are no assessment methods with SWLDs in Ab Governorate Yemen. The teachers are not qualified in the educational programs and assessment method provided to SWLDs. In difference to this category in government schools due to low awareness of the method used to detect LDs from the administrator and teachers. Most schools have a lack of resource room due to low financial support and lack of awareness of the importance of resource room in promoting the educational process, especially for students with special needs. Conclusion and recommendation. Teachers are looking to the SWLDs as study delays resulting from neglecting or unwillingness to study. This idea is reflected in teachers' performance in the classroom. The only measure that the teacher takes is to inform the guardian about the case of their child and ask for attention to his level of the study due to lack of awareness of the nature of LD. The researcher recommended that conducting a training program for teachers and administrators about the nature of LD, assessment methods, and educational services in government schools in Ab Governorate Yemen. Each school should have a research room equipped with appropriate aids as the main support in the educational process for students with special needs. Conducting special courses for teachers of research room and informing them their role and the mechanism of their work with SWLDs in Ab Governorate Yemen. These are some of the references. Thank you.
Thank you, Amani, for presenting your paper. So now we call upon Ms. Purnima, the trainee from integrated third year, to present her paper on research-based intervention strategies to cope up with social isolation among children with learning disabilities.
Sir, am I audible now?
Purnima, it's audible. Your screen is visible. Go ahead. Stick to your time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So my topic is research-based intervention strategies to cope up with social isolation among children with learning disability. Struggle in social skills. Research has shown that children with learning disabilities not only have academic difficulties, but may also exhibit deficits in social skills. Individuals with learning disability may be less observant in their social environment, may misinterpret the social behavior of others at times. And may not learn as easily from experiences or social cues as their friends. Social acceptance is pivotal in a child's life, but it is harder to obtain if one has learning disability. Individuals with learning disability experiences being stressed, ridiculed, and labeled as dumb, subnormal, and slow learners by their peers. This paper deals with some key intervention strategies to overcome these problems. First stage is social alienation, which creates social isolation, where children with learning disability will be pushed to stay alone. So, social alienation. Social alienation is a situation where an individual feels disconnected from the society, which they believe themselves as a part, be it friends, family, or wider society. Alienation is a complex condition that affects many people. There are many types of alienation. We are going to deal with isolation, which means having a sense of loneliness or exclusion, such as being a minority in a group. Social isolation. Carpentino Moya defined social isolation as a state in which a person or a group experience a need or a desire for increased involvement with others, but it is unable to make that contact. Social isolation may be associated with other symptoms and signs, including social withdrawal, a lack of interest in daily activities, boredom, a loss of interest in personal hygiene, poor eating and nutrition habits, home environment in repair, keeping excessive clutter or hoarding, poor sleep quality or impairment. So what is the difference between alienation and isolation? Alienation is a feeling of being estranged or neglected, whereas isolation means living in separation or alone. Isolation can be voluntary or involuntary. Loneliness. Children with learning disabilities, particularly children with learning disabilities and mental retardation, more vulnerable to feelings of loneliness than their peers without disabilities. Loneliness consists of two interrelated dimensions, social loneliness and emotional loneliness. It is a subjective experience which is unpleasant in nature and has aversive experience that involve feelings of sadness and being left out by significant others. Individuals with learning disabilities often view that they do not have their ability to cope up with.
Purnima.
Yes, sir.
Slides are not moving.
No, sir, I am not moving my slide. That they do not have ability to cope up with stressful academic situations. Educators should look for the signs of loneliness in their students who tend to be very shy and withdrawn or who are prone to aggressive behavior. Now, let us look into intra and interpersonal skills, which are very important for an individual to be socially accepted. Intrapersonal skills. Intrapersonal skills or communication is one that we have with ourselves. That is the communication that occurs in our mind. Intrapersonal communication incorporates acts of imagination, self-talk, visualization, recall, and other sorts of internal vocalization. It plays a crucial role in different social as well as personal functions. Interpersonal skills. Interpersonal skills or communication is an exchange of information between two or more people. Interpersonal skills are very important for communicating and working with groups and individuals in your personal as well as professional life. People with strong interpersonal skills tend to build good relationship and can work well with others. These are some research-based key intervention approaches to help students with learning disability who are lonely. Social skill training, we can initiate, maintain, and terminate the interactions. Assertiveness training, conflict resolution skills, social problem solving skills, dealing with aggressive behavior. We can create opportunities for social interaction and create an accepting classroom climate. We can teach the adaptive coping skills and strategies, and we can enhance the students' self-esteem. Self-esteem and children with learning disability. Research found that individuals with learning disabilities develop a negative self-perception of themselves, unlike their peers who do not have a learning disability. Low self-esteem is associated with children with learning disability due to academic challenges labeled as slow learners and rejection from their peers. Self-esteem can be defined as valuing one's self-worth. Teaching students to substitute ineffective and passive coping techniques with more adaptive and effective strategies. Teachers can enhance the self-esteem of students across all domains by providing them with appropriate classroom jobs and responsibilities, giving positive reinforcement. So these are my final thoughts. Teachers can use several strategies to promote a sense of belonging and acceptance for students with learning disability, thereby reducing feelings of loneliness and social isolation. They can become knowledgeable about their child's social life, structuring the environment to promote friendship and a satisfactory relationship among kids, providing training and intervention to promote child's competence and self-control, modeling, peer tutoring, role-playing, problem-solving exercise, nurturing the child's belief and his ability to develop better friendship skills, maintaining a positive attitude and accepting that kids may vary in the way they are. So gist of this presentation is, for children with learning disability, the first step is to help them understand that they are just as smart as other kids and they can catch up to their peers with right support. Next step is to provide support to help kids develop needed skills and strategies to work around the underlying problems so that they will have opportunities to succeed academically as well as socially. So these are my references, and thank you so much for giving this opportunity. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Purnima and Mrs. V. Indrani, for their paper on research-based intervention strategies to cope up with the LD. So now we call upon the next presenter, Mrs. S. N. Hamsapriya, Assistant Professor of Special Education, Department of HI, RKM Mary FEMSC, to present her paper on Students with Hearing Impairment Misunderstood with Learning Disability, Bridging the Gap of Learning Difficulties and Language Learning. Over to you.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes, ma'am, it's audible, and make it slideshow mode.
Yes, sir, it is in slideshow mode only.
Ma'am, okay, go ahead.
Okay. So, good evening, all of you. My title is Students with Hearing Impairment Misunderstood with the Learning Disorder, Bridging the Gap of Learning Difficulties with the Support of Assistive Technology to Learn Language. To start with the definition given by IDEA about hearing impairment that is so severe that the child is impaired in processing linguistic information through hearing with or without amplification that adversely affects the child's educational performance. Same idea given the definition regarding specific learning disability means a disorder in one or more of the basic psychological process involved in understanding or in using language, spoken or written. So from the field of medical.
Ma'am, excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Your slides are not moving, and just please take only 5 minutes to complete your presentation.
Okay, sir. Is it visible, sir, now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So from the field of medical, learning disability, learning disorder, or learning difficulty is a condition in the brain that causes difficulties comprehending or processing information and can be caused by several different factors. To understand the difference, what is learning disability disorder and learning difficulties, the definition given by Mental Health Organization differentiates between the disability and difficulty related to learning. So learning disability constitutes a condition which affects learning and intelligence across all areas of life. But in case of learning difficulty, constitutes a condition which creates an obstacle to specific form of learning, but does not affect the overall IQ of an individual. So to understand better whether it is same or different, it varies from both nationally and internationally. In United States, students are identified as learning disabilities or learning disorder. In United Kingdom, they prefer the term learning difficulty. In Australian states and territories, they encourage the use of the term learning difficulties. Coming to the challenges of children with hearing impairment, they face problem in sound, speech, sounds, language, and communication aspects. So to understand better about learning disorder or disability and the learning difficulties, the author divided into 5 aspects like population, types, characteristics, tools, strategies to overcome, and assistive technology. Through these aspects, we can understand better how to bridge the gap. So related to population, NCES, that is National Center for Educational Statistics, given the statistics, the 33% of children with specific learning disabilities were reported in the 1920, and IDEA also served about 3 to 21 age about the children with the specific learning disabilities. So when under the types of LD, from the morning we are coming across the types like dyslexia, graphia, calculia, then auditory processing, language, and other things. But specifically in case of learning difficulties, so the phonological and morphological, syntactic, semantic, grammatic, pragmatic, and mathematical abstract concepts, perception problems, and teaching method and teaching learning methods are the specific areas to understand in case of children with hearing impairment. When coming to the common characteristics, children with learning disabilities and children with hearing impairment shows the similar difficulties in reading and writing, in math, and paying attention, then understanding the direction, telling story, time, and organized also. But in case of children with difficulties, same things were reported as learning disorder. So same like reading, writing, spelling, arithmetic areas. But in case of children with hearing impairment, there can be a link between early hearing loss and learning disabilities. In case of additional condition or associated condition, learning disabilities in the hearing population were reported in national institutes. So in case of assessment, tools for LD, many standardized educational batteries are available. I'm not going to read the names, just for your view. Learning difficulties, the psychologist also using the standardized tools to identify the learning difficulties, because in some other countries it is mentioned as learning disability, disorder, and difficulties are same. Bridging the gap through various strategies, we have to follow teaching methods, techniques, approaches, and strategies. As a special educator, we have to take care of learning methods, understanding the process, perception level, text understanding level, knowledge, skill, application, and analysis and synthesis. Strategies to overcome, we have to use IEP and ILP and set plans for the outcomes and set objectives. To overcome the challenges, we have to set reasonable expectation and focus on strength, task into smaller steps, regular breaks, constructive feedbacks, and use of multisensory approach, and homework completion habits encourage deeper thought and encouraging and interest. So these are the assistive technologies for learning disabilities, apps and softwares which are paid, and free versions are available. So to understand better about learning disorder and learning difficulties, the population of LD differs and population of language difficulties also differs. When coming to types, both differs in the area of LD and in the area of children with hearing impairment with learning difficulties. So in case of characteristics, same looks like same, but levels differs. In case of tools, specific tools are available for LD, and tools for language difficulties generally assessed by teachers. In case of strategies, technically followed to overcome the challenges. In case of language difficulties, generally planned by teachers and the team workers. So to conclude, children with hearing impairment mostly faces learning difficulties, not the learning disorder. In case of associated or additional disabilities, multisensory approach can be utilized. In hearing impairment population, learning disability should be identified earlier and served. Teaching for understanding is more important to bring changes in the life of children with HI and LD. So these are the few references. I request you to you all to go through the full paper and give your comments. Thank you all.
Ma'am, thank you for your detailed presentation, ma'am. Thank you. So the next presenter, Ms. Vismaya, Special Educator, Freelance Education Consultant, and Ms. Aruna, Special Educator, Tactopus Learning Solutions. So the title of the paper would be Learning Disability and E-Learning, the Widened Digital Divide with reference to COVID-19 pandemic.
I'm sharing my screen. Is my screen visible, sir?
Yes, visible. Make into slideshow mode.
Yeah.
Yes, fine.
Good evening, one and all present here. Today, myself, P. Aruna, and Vismaya, we are here to present a paper on learning disability and e-learning, the widened digital divide with reference to COVID-19 pandemic. The major terminologies used in our study are learning disability, COVID-19, digital divide, and e-learning. According to Learning Disability Association, those students who experience significant difficulties in learning and making progress in school comes under this category of learning disability. And COVID-19, the coronavirus disease, is an infectious disease which is caused by severe acute respiratory syndrome that affects our respiratory and gastrointestinal organs. E-learning, it is a mode of learning that takes place via internet with the use of electronic devices such as mobile phones, computers, etc. Digital divide in general, it refers to a division between people who have access and who do not have access to the digital media. Digital divide and students with learning disability. Digital divide, it makes students with learning disability underskilled and inferior to this digital world because they have difficulty in concentrating in online classes because of their short attention span, and their routines are also being affected because of closure of schools. Teachers also feel that there are no accessible educational material in e-learning platforms to teach students with learning disability. Beyond the academics, if we see, children with disability also face difficulty in accessing rehabilitation services such as physiotherapy, occupational therapy, etc. regularly during the pandemic. This makes them feel isolated in their household, which makes them largely miss social interaction and increases their stress levels, and in turn affects their mental health and education very adversely. COVID-19 and widened digital divide. After this COVID-19 pandemic, we can see that everything is being digitalized and schools are closed and classes are being conducted via online. Though a lot of strategies and methods are being innovated and discovered for e-learning, still teachers and students, they face difficulty while incorporating them. When it comes to children with learning disability in specific, they have a very unique set of learning needs and limitations. A few of these requirements could not be addressed through e-learning platforms. As students with learning disability, they have very limited digital skills and resources for continued education. This unequal access of digital learning, it has worsened the situation for them now. These are 5 papers that we reviewed for our study. Findings of the study. there were no significant difference seen between the two groups, that is students with learning disability and typically developed children when it comes to opportunity to access computer and internet. But in performance wise, students with learning disability perform poorer than typically developed children in many of the computer related competencies. Teachers complained about the usability problems in e-learning platforms because they were not able to adjust the difficulty level in the tasks based on their child's ability. The text-intensive interfaces that are being used in e-learning tools, they poses barrier for students with language processing disorder. Students also face challenges in getting and using the assistive technology. E-learning has adversely affected the academic skills of students with learning disability, which in turn affects major of their life aspects and social interactions. Teachers required support for e-teaching and specific training in e-teaching in order to provide learning materials, tools, and strategies for their children. And it was found in the study that individual differences were not very much considered while developing e-learning tools. These are the factors responsible for the digital divide. Digital illiteracy, language barrier, lack of awareness about the available options, socio-cultural disparity, economical backwardness, geographical and regional differences, unable to adapt to the contemporary methods that are being used now, gender inequality. Measures taken by the Indian government for bridging this gap. BharatNet project, which was introduced in 2011. This is optic fiber internet throughout India. NSDL, National Science Digital Library, Vidyavahini, Diksha, and educational channels that are being introduced, such as Swayam Prabha, Kalvi channel, etc., to give continued education throughout this pandemic. Suggestions and recommendations. First, to promote basic digital literacy among all the teachers, to acknowledge the richness of social and cultural backgrounds from which the learners are coming, and to promote the role of external and internal social support, such as the family, peers, classmates, in the process of learning. Quality of technological and pedagogic choices are to be considered while developing and using e-learning environments. A comprehensive strategy was very much important to fulfill every aspect of an individual learner's need. And a learning environment should be in such a way that students should have central and active role, and such learning environment should be provided. E-learning environment should be multisensorial in nature, and to promote affordability of broadband, internet, and digital learning tools. Conclusion. This COVID-19 pandemic, it has very well amplified the need of digital connectivity across the world. And we can see that it is further disadvantaging the marginalized group, and it is persisting also. Various studies has revealed that only 62% of children with disability had access to online classes, that too irregularly, of which only 33% were rarely or never be able to understand lessons or finish assignments. So these data shows that how adversely this digital divide has affected our education of children with disability. So by bridging these gaps through government initiative and non-governmental initiative, children with disability will get benefited and be able to enjoy their fundamental right to education and attain equitable outcomes like others. These are our references. And thank you everyone for listening patiently.
Thank you, Ms. Aruna and Vismaya, for their paper on learning disability and e-learning, the wide and digital divide with reference to COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you. So the last paper presenter of the first day of this webinar would be Ms. J. Gangadhar Rao, PhD research scholar from RKMRI FDMSc. So he is going to present his paper on discrepancies in academics of school-going children, challenges and recommendations. Over to you, Gangadhar. இல்ல கங்காதரனே போடு.
Hello. Good evening. Just one. Sir, good evening, sir. Logi, sir.
Yes, SG.
Yes. Sir.
Yeah.
Sorry for disturbance from my side.
Make your PowerPoint in slideshow mode.
Yeah, yes, sir. Sir, it is a slide. Yeah, is it okay, sir?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for everyone, and good evening to all, and good evening to organizer and Dr. Sudha ma'am and Lokesh sir. Thanks for this opportunity. Just I'm going to present a small presentation with regard to the children with specific learning disabilities. Since morning we have a lot of sessions from by so many experts with related to the learning disability and the so many issues and problems. Very useful information we have received since morning. And my presentation is related to the discrepancies in academics of school-going children, and what are the challenges and recommendations which I have collected from some of the reviews from the so that I'm presenting here. The concept of learning disability is still new in many developing countries. However, India has a history of research in this area over last 2 decades from different disciplines such as education, psychology, pediatrics, speech and hearing, psychiatry, and as well as early intervention area also. So in this regard, from some of the books I referred, I have collected some of the information that I placed in my presentation with related to teachers' perspective, as well as teachers' teaching methods and practices, and problems and languages, shortage of professionals, and lack of standardized assessment tools, and clarification in grading as learning difficulty and disability, and social stigma and labeling, and some of the government policies and provisions with related to the learning disabilities. So in India, around 13 to 14% of the school children suffer from learning disorders. The children are labeled as failures by the society we live in, but in reality, it's not that the children who have failed, but it is the education system that has failed in recognizing and helping them. As teachers are the link between the children and the education system, it's their level of understanding and awareness that sets the path for the children's future. This is given by Dr. Sneha Bansal in the year 2015. So research is conducted in different parts of the world have found difficulties in promoting children with learning disabilities in academics. Such I have given some example, others names and years I have given here, you can see. And however, numerous studies have indicated that regular education teachers feel that both pre-service and in-service education programs are inadequate in preparing them for teaching students with learning disabilities in regular classrooms. So teachers' perspective. The millions of people around the world suffer silently from specific learning disability due to misinformation with regard to early identification and intervention. So children are not enjoying their school life, instead of they are opposing going to school. In India, some efforts were made, like the NCERT introduced a handbook in the year 2005, so on the inclusion of children with special needs. So then after, there are a number of a series of workshops are being started to conduct and across the country, in various parts of the country. So in the training programs involved regular teachers, teacher educators, special educators, and experts in the field of special education and inclusive education, as well as the government official, non-government officials to know the inclusion of children with special needs. Further, a study conducted in Haridwar, India, in the year 2015 showed that 67% of teachers does not have knowledge about specific learning disabilities. Overall, teacher educators who participated in the study had a low level of knowledge about students' specific learning disabilities, irrespective of their gender and experience. So there is another study conducted in Puducherry on the awareness of teachers about specific learning disabilities. The study showed that the teachers in inclusive classrooms require more skill training to impart education to students with specific learning disabilities. So today's society, there are schools which are result oriented, and focus on mostly producing toppers. They are not interested in keeping so-called slow learner in their classrooms. This attitude hinders the child's learning progress and results in worsening of prognosis of the problem. So specific learning disabilities result in unexpected academic underachievement. So teaching authorities are demanding and lack of patience for slow learners. So the authors recommended that the government to implement intensive and methodological training to fulfill the educational needs for specific learning disabilities. So now the next one is teaching methods and practices. The teaching methods and styles adopted by the teachers differ from school to school and also have regional differences. So some schools focus on phonetics and teach accordingly. Some adopt the traditional rote learning pattern in which the child study alphabets without understanding their formation and sound. Rote learning methods focus on grades and good marks, ignoring the overall development of the child. Traditional learning teaching methods such as spelling games and cursive writing exercises during vacations have almost disappeared. So multi-sensory teaching aids, visual and auditory cues, computer software providing text-to-text and the speech-to-text capabilities and so on are restricted to only a few schools which can afford to provide such quality teaching practices. It is very difficult to achieve this technological sophistication in all classrooms in a developing countries like India, which suffers.
Kindly move to your recommendations or findings.
Yes, yes, sir. Few. Just a minute. For private economic disparity. Yes, sir. So there are shortage of professionals. In the year 2016, the Special Education Forum of India has demanded to appoint a special education teachers in regular schools as per the CBSE notifications. Also, we found that special educators in the area of learning disability is less, since the number of education institutions offering professional programs or courses in the area of learning disability is very low as per the report of the RCA New Delhi. Problems with language subjects. See, here we can say, some spelling sound correspondence in direct in Hindi language, which means that we write what we speak. But in the case of English, there are certain notarized traits on the language which makes it complex, and it becomes necessary to remember the subjective spelling and words. So those children having difficulty in processing learning find it difficult to comprehend people reading and writing Hindi, and other languages also do suffer from language difficulties. It is seen equally in the other languages as well. So I'm skipping because of time lacking. We have a lack of time. So next one is lack of standardized assessment tools. So in India, the identification and diagnosis of learning disabilities is very difficult. So as because standardized assessment tools are not available. So India is a multilingual country. So it is important to assess the problem of SLD in a child's mother tongue. However, many assessment instruments developed in regional languages like Marathi, Gujarati, and Kannada, which lack national-wide applicability. So some assessment tools can only be administered on the students' English medium like NIMHANS index for specific learning disability, whereas in India, about 1,000.4 million students study in Hindi medium schools also. So, the content used in the batteries is not standardized. Existing batteries have not included in all the age groups for assessment, which makes assessment difficult, especially when the student is to be assessed in 10th and 12th board classes for the issuance of a certificate is for availing benefits. So there is an urgent need to develop standardized teacher-made assessment tools in the different languages also. Complications in grading of either it is a learning difficulty or a learning disability. So lack of support from school authorities.
Gangadhar,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Go to your last conclusion.
Yes, sir. Yes. Okay. So then next one is a social stigma and labeling because of their difficulty.
At least you can go for recommendation.
Yes, sir. Yes. So there is the next slide on the government policies and the provisions for students with learning disability. And my conclusion is that it is necessary to examine with all states in practical difficulties when dealing these children with learning difficulties and disabilities in school or clinical settings through conducting an experiment and research, understanding and learning disability fully. The experts must focus on constructing a standardized assessment tools or scales, keeping in view of the diversity of Indian culture. A thorough insight into the overlap areas like misconceptions, assessment tools, intervention programs, and welfare schemes and benefits to those children are very required and focused. Thank you for listening my presentation.
So Gangadhar,
Yes,
thank you
yes.
for your presentation. Thank you.
Yes, sir. But the last moment something happened to my laptop. I could not able to deliver
Fine.
my.
Okay, no issue.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your presentation. Now I request Parvin ma'am, the Assistant Professor, Department of ID, and the moderator of today's presentation, to summarize the presentation, ma'am. Over to you.
Yes, I request Gangadhar to please end your presentation.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. How we can close this one? Stop sharing. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So now we are at the closure of today's paper presentation. And we appreciate and congratulate all the presenters who have presented their piece of research work. Today, around 12 members have presented. Some of them are faculty members and special educators, research scholars, and teacher trainees. They have come up they really good studies. And today, among the 12 papers, there are 10 thematic papers and 2 research papers. So among the 10 thematic papers, I think around 4 are related to assistive technology. The very first presenter, Ms. Yukti Gupta, she presented on AT for LD, and she beautifully explained about the barriers of AT implementation. And she also shared about how to overcome these barriers through 4 models of assistive technology. And then we appreciate you, Yukti. And the next presenter on AT was on, I think it is Dr. Prabha Hariharan. She presented on how dynamic geometric software can be beneficial for students with LD. She very well explained the process, and I think this DGS, dynamic geometric software, is not only helpful for students with LD, but it will be helpful for students with ID also. So, thank you, Dr. Prabha ma'am, for choosing a new topic, and you have shared about unique software, which many of these special educators may not be knowing. A good presentation by you, Dr. Prabha madam. And then Dr. Dhanalakshmi, she also shared about high-tech devices for learning disabilities. And especially she explained about Otter AI, which is a speech to text software, and which will be helpful for the students with learning disabilities in their academics. And there was one more paper which is not exactly related to AT, which was presented by Mrs. Hamsapriya, but still she had explained about some assistive tools which can be used as identifying tools, so that we can differentiate between students with hearing impairment and learning disabled children, so that to avoid misconceptions. So we also appreciate her paper, Mrs. Hamsapriya. And these were the 4 papers on assistive technology, and all the remaining 6 thematic papers were unique in nature. Dr. J.B. Disha, she was explaining on educating students with learning disabilities, what is the role of teachers, by keeping in mind the students with disabilities, their characteristics, especially like attention, perception, memory, and organization. And she explained how the special educators can bring accommodation and modification in the teaching methods as well as in materials. Good presentation, Dr. Disha. And the another paper was by Mrs. Indrani and teacher trainee Purnima. And their paper is also unique in nature. It was about research-based intervention strategies to cope up social isolation among children with LD. Yes, obviously, social isolation is very much prevalent among students with learning disability, and we have shared many intervention strategies to overcome this social isolation. We appreciate your best efforts, Mrs. Indrani and Purnima. And the another paper which was presented by Dr. Sukumari and Ms. Chitra, it was on triggering neurotransmitters to manage learning disability. It is also unique in nature, and it is a really useful topic, so that special educators can know about how they can use this neurotransmitters to manage children with learning disability in inclusive classrooms. We appreciate your research work. And there is another paper by Mrs. Sendilwani. She explained about sight-word learning. So very well she explained about the sight-word teaching techniques and how it can be helpful in enhancing the reading skills and comprehension among children with learning disabilities. And then there was a paper by Ms. Vismaya and Ms. Aruna. Again, it is a very special paper. We really congratulate both of you for taking up such a different topic, that is a digital divide during the COVID pandemic period, how this digital divide has affected their learning of students with learning disabilities. And they have also explained about factors that are responsible for this digital divide, and what are all the initiatives, measures that are taken by the Indian government, and how we can reduce this digital divide so that we can provide a good learning environment for students with learning disabilities. We appreciate both of you, Ms. Vismaya and Ms. Aruna. And finally, there was another thematic paper which was presented by Mr. Gangadhar Rao, and he explained about various discrepancies in academics, especially the teaching methods, teaching practices, and assessment procedures, tools, etc. What kind of difficulties, discrepancies are there, and how we can overcome these discrepancies. By his recommendations, he has explained that one. And these are the various thematic papers. And there are only 2 research papers. We are sorry to note that there are only 2 research papers, and we really congratulate both the presenters, Ms. Ramya and Ms. Amani, for presenting their research work. Ms. Ramya, she has explained on the effect of multisensory learning with reference to students with a specific learning disability. And this, I think, would have been more useful to the special educators if you have focused more on the methodology part. Yeah, so that was a little bit lagging. And I think there were questions about your methodology part. Some participants have asked. Otherwise, we appreciate your research work for presenting good study, Ms. Ramya. And then Ms. Amani, we also appreciate your work. That is, you have done a study on status of educational services and diagnostic methods for students with LD, especially at Amen. And this is, of course, the need of the hour. We need to know what is happening in the country, in different countries. And we feel very sorry to know that there are very poor educational services are available at your country, Yemen. And you should really take up some initiatives to provide some appropriate services to the population of disabled, especially children with learning disabilities. We congratulate for presenting a good paper. So this is all about today's presentation. We congratulate and appreciate all the presenters. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Kind attention for all the participants. You will be circulated the Google Form link for the attendance for the first day of conference.